Alright guys, so I know numbers is hard for a lot of you guys, and so I hope this makes sense to you. But I did a little deeper digging into the math of the MULN vote. It wasn't quite as simple as I showed it yesterday, and so I don't like people calling me out on bad math, and so I'm going to post an edit on the math before anyone tries to call me out. So I'm gonna estimate here. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I'll be pretty close to accurate. So the numbers that I showed was 4.5 or 488.5 million shares outstanding that could possibly vote for the dilution. And remember, they need a majority in order to win the vote. And so that means they need over 244,250,000 shares voting yes in order to win the vote. They won the vote with roughly 249 million shares. It's like 248.5, I believe. And basically, from the time that they announced the initial voting power on June 10th, and they said anyone that bought by June 2nd would have the right to vote, they added 2 more filings that allowed them to have a net total. So the first one on June 24th gave them an additional roughly 6 million shares of voting power. And then the next one on July 2nd is the cutoff date they used, which is matching in outstanding shares, but they didn't really announce it until the July 27th results. But they gave themselves like another 1.7 million voting power of shares. Now, basically the math that I did was if we just subtract the shares that they added, so let's just say the 7.9 million shares that they added, you'd have 240 million positive votes. And I showed you that they need 244.25 million positive votes in order to win the vote. Well, if you subtract the 7.9 million yes votes, you have to also subtract it from the outstanding shares. And so when you do that, we get roughly 480 million votes possible off the June 2nd filing, which means they only needed, if we divide that by 2, they only needed 240 million votes in order to say yes to dilution. And if you subtract the yes number from the yes number of shares they added after June 2nd from the after June 2nd from the total number of outstanding shares that they finalized the voting with, and instead use just the actual June 2nd numbers, basically the vote would have passed by like 300,000 shares. Now, here's the thing. We got the update on June 24th that they updated new shares in order to be able to vote with. Why would they do that if they were already going to win the vote by 300,000 shares? Well, there was 883,000, I think it was, shares that abstained from the vote. And so what happens is you subtract that from the outstanding shares. So instead of 240 million, or instead of 480 million, it'd be 479 million. And now they only need 239.5 million votes. But here's the thing, nobody got their voting packet until June 29th. And so if you look at them when they updated the shares on June 24th, it's because they didn't know if they had the vote. Everyone that abstained from voting on dilution, you know they're retail. If they took hundreds of millions of shares to be able to vote yes, you think they left out you think they abstained 800,000 of their votes? No, it was definitely retail. And so they didn't know what was going to happen with these 883,000 votes. And if only 300,000 of them would have voted no or not voted, then they would have lost the vote. And so they were forced to rig a vote that they weren't sure if they were going to win based off the June 2nd numbers of what they filed. Now, what's interesting is in the June 10th filing based off June 2nd numbers, in this filing, after it goes over like all the dilution numbers and stuff, it has this little note saying that of the Series A and Series C preferred stock, there's still 7.6 million shares of common stock that can be issued. And if we look up the number of shares added over June 24th and July 27th, when the vote actually happened, the common stock that was increased was like 7.3 million, and the preferred shares voting power that was increased was 600,000. And in this little SEC filing on the June 10th filing, it says that there's 7.6 million that they can exercise those preferred shares into common stock. And they added 7.3 million common stock. How much you want to bet they gave themselves the voting power for those warrants on June 10th for the June 2nd cutoff date, and then they exercised those warrants as they gave themselves the right to in the SEC filing, and gave themselves common stock that they could then go vote with as well. And so basically they double voted from the same source of shares or warrants. That's not a fact 100% yet. We're looking for an expert to go over all these thoughts in my heads and come out with the absolute truth, or the closest to truth we can get before discovery. But it seems exactly what's happening right here. And it seems like if they had done nothing and just trusted they had the vote with their original June 2nd numbers, they would have won the dilution vote by a hair. And they'd probably be in a lot better spot legally than they are now, where they didn't know, and so they didn't want to take a chance, and they gave themselves the shares they needed in order to win the dilution vote. It's wild to think about, people. A lot going on right now. I just saw this filing from BBIG, and in here you guys will see on the 1, 2, 3, 4th line, middle of the line, it says, to be effective, stockholders holding a majority of the shares of common stock outstanding and entitled to vote on this proposal. Okay, so MULN Automotive didn't give us full disclosure telling us these were the rules of the dilution vote. I wonder why. But if you go and, like, I've already found it on the SEC on a vote for merger, like if your company's going to vote for a merger, it's total number of votes of outstanding available to vote must vote in the affirmative. And so if you didn't vote, trust me, your vote counted as a no, unless your broker voted for you, because they're allowed to vote on certain things. But I don't think they're allowed to vote on this. And the only ones that I think may always be voting for everything whenever they want is the people in Europe that tell me they're not allowed to vote. And I got a feeling that those brokers vote for them every single vote for every single company, every single time that their clients can't vote. But that's something hopefully I'll find out at discovery. But this is a BBIG. Like, if BBIG could write an SEC filing saying the total number of votes will be for the dilution will be approved based off who votes rather than who doesn't vote. So, for example, in MULN Automotive, there was 249 million that voted yes, 50 million that voted no, 800,000 that said they don't want their vote counted either way, and then there was 190 million that didn't vote. Everyone, even when we sent the cease and desist on the dilution and claimed that they won their shares by 52% vote and it was rigged, he claimed that he won the vote by 86% because he was looking at the 249 million number versus the 52 million no votes. And he's like, look, we won at 86%. But if the law states that the number is based on total number of outstanding shares allowed to vote, regardless of how they vote or don't vote, you need 51% to say yes. Well, it sure does make MULN Automotive's lawyer look like a clown when he responds that we are garbage and that we should drop the suit immediately because our numbers are wrong, when he's claiming that they won the vote by 86%. You think BBIG, like, people just don't vote. Most people investing are just there to make money and they don't participate. MULN Automotive had 190 million shares not vote. AMC, when AMC was trying to get their dilution in 2021 to stop the squeeze, they were saying they were saying, look, nobody's voting. Like, even if you want to vote no, please just vote. Because they're hoping that once people start to vote, they end up voting yes. And a small percent of people always will do the opposite of what they wanted to do. I don't know why people are like that. But they would have got some no votes. And maybe it could have helped with what they were already doing. And so, but like, there's already evidence in society that retail just does not vote. And so, thankfully, the government, one good thing they've ever done in their life is that they said for mergers and for increased authorized shares, you have to have a majority vote. I don't care if people vote or not, you got to have a majority say yes, because this can completely ruin any investor out there if you just take it and dilute the crap out of it. And so they protected us in that one way. And all I'm going to say is, why would BBIG announce and make it this obvious if MULN, if they could change the writing in here and make it to where they could guarantee the vote because they know that retail is just not going to vote for the most part, and so all their shares that say yes will dominate the shares that say no. And so MULN Automotive didn't say, like, besides the lawyer responding that way, and if you read his words, he says votes cast. He doesn't say by total votes possible. Like, he kind of gives himself an out the way that he says it. So besides that one letter, there's nothing in MULN's SEC filings that state one way or the other. Do they need a majority of votes that were voted, or do they need a majority of outstanding shares that were voted? And so they just left that part out. BBIG acknowledges that it's of all outstanding shares. And yeah, I know that we got them. Like, any way that I look at this, the more that I go into detail, just the worse it looks for them. Join the lawsuit, people. Join the lawsuit.